Nancy Stoner. I'm the president of the Potomac Riverkeeper Network. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful fall day. It is really spectacular out there today. I was taking pictures of the river while I was walking along this morning. It's fantastic. And this is in a series that we're doing, Water Wednesday series. The three riverkeepers all did presentations. Council or our vice president for programs and litigation will be doing one after the election in November about how the results of the elections at every level impact our watershed. That's on November 18th, so please put that on your calendar as well. So it's a real pleasure to have all of you on this Zoom with me. These days, it's great to see people's faces, if only virtually. So I appreciate all of you joining us and the engagement and support you provide to our organization. So the title of the presentation today is A Tale of Two Rivers. And some of you might think that means the Shenandoah and the Potomac. But in fact, it's all a watershed, one connected watershed. With lots of other tributaries that are named tributaries as well. And the two rivers that we'll be talking about today are really the two sides of the coin, two visions, if you will, of the river. Is it a beautiful river? Is it a treasure? Or is it a polluted river? And of course, the answer is it's a little of both. And so we'll be talking about that today. I call your attention also to our mission, which is at the bottom of that first slide, which I won't read to you, but the gist of it is that there are two things that are in our mission, one of which is stopping pollution, and the other of which is enhancing access. We'll be talking mostly about stopping pollution today, but if you have comments or questions on enhancing access, we can talk about that as well. Next slide. So just a few facts for those who are not that familiar with the watershed. I know some of you are very familiar with it. So it's home to more than 6 million people, spans 4 states and DC, and of course houses our nation's capital. It's about 405 miles in stream length. It's the second largest tributary of the Chesapeake Bay, which is the largest estuary in the United States. And this is a beautiful picture of Great Falls State Park. And this actual picture by Roy Sewell will be available for sale at our gala that's coming up on October 23rd. So that's my first commercial for the gala. There will be another one later. Let's keep going. And just a few more things about the watershed. So it's a very diverse watershed. Starts up in the headwaters of West Virginia and in the mountains of the Shenandoah Valley. And goes all the way down to the Chesapeake Bay. It's a beautiful watershed, and it's almost 15,000 square miles. So it's a huge watershed for us to try to protect with the three riverkeepers that we have. We have an Upper Potomac, a Potomac, and a Shenandoah riverkeeper, and Harper's Ferry is the borders of their jurisdiction. The Potomac was called the Nation's River by George Washington, but to us, it's our hometown river. It's the river that we have the great luxury and benefit of enjoying every day. So we love it. I know you love it too, and so we're very grateful to have the opportunity to protect it. Next slide. So this is about, the first part of this is about how the Potomac watershed is a national treasure, right? What a great watershed. So lots of different ways in which outdoor enthusiasts use and enjoy the watershed. And the statistics show that they spend a lot of money to do that as well. That adds to our economy, about $45 billion annually by outdoor enthusiasts in Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. Now, it doesn't link up exactly to our watershed, but those are the data that are out there. But the idea is that outdoor activities are big money as well as great fun. And so what you see here is on the left is Harper's Ferry and a rafter enjoying Harpers Ferry, and on the right is stand-up paddleboarders in the Potomac Gorge. Just two of the examples of the great fun that people have on our watershed. Next slide. And it's also a treasure for anglers. So this young man here is at an event that we have in normal years called Riopalooza, focused on Spanish speakers within the watershed. He's enjoying a channel catfish that he caught. We didn't have that event this year, but we look forward to having it again next year. And on the right is the River Rodeo, which is an event that we anticipate having in September of next year, where we take skilled anglers out on the water in the Shenandoah. Lots of anglers adding to the economy and adding to the enjoyment and enrichment of their life out on the river. Next slide. And of course, it's a treasure for boaters as well. I'm just amazed at how many sailboats you see out on the Potomac in the evenings, but not just sailboats, of course, motorboats, and then there's a raft there. Downriver Canoe is one of the outfitters with whom we partner to get people out on the water in the summer in a program that we call Riopalooza. We didn't have that program this summer, and Downriver actually never opened this summer. But again, we hope to have more on the water activities next summer. Next slide. And then it's a national treasure for swimmers. The photo on the left is my favorite slide, or my favorite photo. I put that in all of my presentations. It's 1922 there, and those swimmers are out at the tidal basin, and the police officer is measuring the length of the swimsuits to make sure they're long enough. So we don't measure swimsuits anymore at the Potomac Riverkeeper Network, but we measure something else that's very important for swimming, which is the bacterial contamination in the water. So we measure the E. coli levels to make sure that swimming will not make you sick. And we did that for the event that's on the right there, which is called Shark Fest. We did not have that event this summer either, but hope to have it again next year. But it's an event that we do with a group called Enviro Sports, and they support open water swims all around the world. And we had about 100 people who came out for that swim at National Harbor, which is often, most of the time, clean enough to swim in. And we did the water quality monitoring to make sure that it was safe that day. The registration fees from that event go to the Special Olympics, so we were very pleased to have that opportunity to support that good cause as well. Next slide. And then, of course, clean water is big money, right? So for waterfront communities, waterfront developments, having water views and access to waterways that are clean and healthy is a tremendous benefit, and one that people will pay for and will increase the value of their homes. And of course, the cleaner the water, the more value there is. So you can see the statistics on the slide there in Alexandria, and the wharf, which is the picture on the right there, and then National Harbor again on the left. We have great partnerships with these communities working to protect and restore the water in those waterfront communities. Next slide. But as I said at the beginning, it's not all a pretty picture, right? So, so the low point for the Potomac was some point in the 50s or 60s or maybe the early 70s, when it looked like this. This is a picture from 1973 in Georgetown, when the river basically looks like a sewer. So it was filled with untreated sewage, with dead fish, with trash, massive algal outbreaks. It was horrible. And President Johnson called it a national disgrace in 1965. DC put a swim ban in effect in 1971 because it was never safe to swim. But fortunately, the next year, 1972, was when the Clean Water Act was passed, paving the way for restoration of the river. Next slide. So I'm jumping over a bunch of time here when a lot of important things were happening. Sewage treatment plants being built, the whole Clean Water Act national permitting system, for point sources came into effect. Tremendous amount of good work that we were able to build on when the Potomac Riverkeeper was started in 2000. And it was started by some people, advocates for the river, who loved the river and felt that there was not a strong enough advocacy voice for the river, and founded the Potomac Riverkeeper to provide that strong advocacy voice, a group that would take the actions necessary to keep the river clean. The first riverkeeper was hired in 2003. That's Ed Merrifield, and he brought his first enforcement action the next year in 2004. And long story short here, from that time until now, the Potomac Riverkeeper, now the Potomac Riverkeeper Network, with those 3 riverkeepers I mentioned earlier, has been taking on the big polluters up and down the river and achieving tremendous victories for clean water. So we don't do it alone, of course. We do it with the help of all of you and our allies throughout the watershed. But we're very proud of the work that we've done that contributes to the progress that we continue to make. The photo there is Morgantown. That's Dean out on a patrol boat. One of the things that we do is investigate pollution, and nobody does it better than Dean Nyox. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about, what are these pollution problems that we still have in the Potomac River? And again, many of you may know this very well, and perhaps even better than I do. But there's some major ones that I want to talk about right now. So the first is the urban pollution that we experience. 2 forms of that: stormwater and combined sewer overflows. So stormwater, of course, is what happens when it rains. All of the pollutants are carried from the pavement, from impervious surfaces of various kinds, streets, parks, yards, and so forth. And it flows untreated into the rivers. So the important thing to recognize about stormwater is that there is no sewage treatment plant at the other end of the pipe. It just carries the pollutants right into the rivers. And then combined sewer overflows, which is we have both in Alexandria and in DC, are where you have the sewage and the stormwater in the same set of pipes designed to overflow when it rains. And it's designed that way because it was designed 100 years ago or more, when there were no sewage treatment plants at the end. So it was a good idea to dilute the sewage with the stormwater. But those systems still exist in, again, both DC and Alexandria, and they overflow pretty much anytime it rains, and discharge raw sewage into the waterways. I want to call your attention to 2 things, one of which is both of these problems are exacerbated by climate change. The more big storm events we have, the more sewage and stormwater pollution we have. And then the other thing I want to call your attention to is the photo on the right. So it's not a very elegant photo. It's actually not a great photo, but it was a photo taken by Dean Nyox, the Potomac Riverkeeper, when he was out doing stand-up paddleboarding with his wife and his daughter this summer. They lived near Alexandria. They were out in the water there, and all of a sudden they saw a huge slug of disgusting raw sewage flowing right in their direction. When you have a sewer overflow, it actually has a velocity to it. You see sewage flowing toward you. So they picked up their stand-up paddleboards, ran out of the water, and then Dean snapped this photo. Dean has been a riverkeeper for 19 years. He said it was the most disgusting CSO he's seen in 19 years. So my point here is that this is not a problem of the past. This is a problem of the present, and one that we need to stop. Next slide. So what's our strategy? So I mentioned already that we're doing water quality monitoring. That's part of our Swimmable Potomac campaign. So in our Swimmable Potomac campaign, we are urging DC to lift that ban on swimming, to allow people to swim when it's safe to swim. And we're asking to have better information provided to the public about when it's safe to swim. Right now, DC's not providing that information, so we're providing it. We're doing water quality monitoring with volunteers and with a donated lab on a donated boat. It's a highly leveraged program, and it's one that puts information out on Swim Guide every Thursday night Friday morning over the summer so people know whether it's safe to go in the water. And of course, we want people to use that information, and we are using that information to drive investments in infrastructure so that we make the investments necessary to improve water quality over time, with the idea that eventually it should be safe to swim almost all of the time, except in a hurricane or something like that. So that's the Swimmable Potomac campaign. We did a report this year. You see it on the right. It was the first annual report that we did of the water quality monitoring data and the results and the recommendations that we have based on that for investments to make the water swimmable. The slide also mentions the Trash-Free Potomac campaign. That is a new campaign that we launched this year. Trash, of course, relates to stormwater because most of the trash in the waterways is not thrown in the waterway. It's thrown on the ground somewhere, or ends up on the ground because of an overflowing trash can or something like that, and then is carried by the rainfall, along with pet waste and oil and grease and all the other things that are in stormwater. So we put together some information on our website, having people understand what they can do to reduce the amount of trash that they generate. And we also have some cleanups. Right now we're doing them in Alexandria and National Harbor. And you have not missed them for the year because there's one this weekend in Alexandria and the following week, October 10th, in National Harbor. So I hope you will come out and join us. Next slide. So how can you help? So I've mentioned a few things already. I'll underline them here. One is you can serve as a water quality monitor. That's a volunteer program. So you can come out, take samples, help do analysis, help post the results and so forth. You do have to have Wednesday mornings free or Thursdays free to help with that, and be in the Washington, D.C. area. That's where we're doing the monitoring at this point. You can also sponsor a site. We're very anxious to continue to expand our program, which we expanded this year to 3 new sites, Mallows Bay, a National Marine Sanctuary, Pohick Bay over on the Virginia side, and then the Tobacco River downstream from DC. But we'd like to find more sites and continue to expand over time. We're interested in sites that are frequently used public access sites, sites where there is a known or likely pollution source, or both. So if you'd like to talk with us about how to sponsor a site and how to help us expand that program, we'd love to talk to you about that. You can also participate in or organize a stream cleanup. I mentioned that we have 2 more this year. We love to have people help organize them and get more people involved. I think it's a very meaningful experience to have for people to be involved in stream cleanups. And of course, you can demand an end to the CSOs. It really is a problem that should be a problem of the past. It's a fixable problem. We just need to make the investments to fix it. And so you can help make that happen by testifying at public hearings, going to rate hearings, helping to lend your voice to the campaign. Next slide. The second kind of pollution I want to talk about is agricultural pollution. So that's the biggest problem in the Shenandoah. And in the Shenandoah, it's mostly pollution that comes from animal manure. Not so much from row crops. There's almost 200 million birds that are raised every year in the Shenandoah, chickens and turkeys, and there's about 500,000 cattle in the Shenandoah. And so from that animal manure, we get 2 kinds of problems, one of which is fecal contamination of the water, and the other is nuisance algal outbreaks. You see the filamentous algae on the left, which grows on the top and also on the bottom sometimes, benthic algae. And then you see the herds of cattle on the right. And if you can see in the distance there are boaters right behind them there. I myself have had the pleasure of swimming in cattle paddies in the water. Not a pleasant experience, and one that I remember well, although it was probably 25 years ago in my life. We need to get the cattle out of there and give them alternative water sources. And we need to make sure the poultry manure, which is actually valuable when put on a crop during the growing season that needs that fertilizer, we need to make sure that's where it goes and not into the river. Again, And these are problems exacerbated by climate change. The big storm events wash the animal manure into the waterway, and the rising temperatures increases the rate at which the algae grow. Next slide. So what's our strategy there? So our strategy is to organize and to address the sources of pollution. We completed organizing effort that resulted in the Shenandoah Watershed Compact. Many of you participated in the meetings to develop this compact. The idea is that everyone up and down the valley, from different perspectives, they all want clean water. We all want clean water. And we all have a vision of a clean Shenandoah. So finding the common ground, how we could work together to make that happen, that's what the compact is about. You can read more about that on our website. And then we have had great success this year in advocating for better regulation, better controls on the sources of animal manure. So for the first time ever, there is a law that was passed by the Virginia General Assembly requiring that herds of cattle be fenced out of the river by 2025. And then we also had great success in the working with the DEQ on the permit requirements for poultry. The big thing there is closing the loophole. Right now, when the poultry manure goes off-site, away from the chicken or turkey houses, it disappears essentially in the system. Working with the DEQ and advocating, we advocated for closing that by having records which are actually already kept but not made public, available to the public as well as to the regulators, so we can track that poultry manure and know where it goes and make sure it's, again, being used beneficially and not going into the river. So the big thing that happens after you have big victories, of course, is that then you have big victories to defend. And so that's what we have. We have significant opposition from the ag industry right now, wanting to change these requirements, the progress that we made this year. So we're now in defense mode. We can use your help in defending these common sense provisions that will help keep animal manure on the crops and out of the river. Next slide. So how do you do that? So, we had the campaign in the Shenandoah is called the Respect the Shenandoah campaign. It very much is about getting more people involved to help us protect the river. One of the things you can do is to document the algal outbreaks using Water Reporter. You see the picture of the smartphone there. It's a smartphone app. You can take photos, put hashtag Respect the Shenandoah, post them. They go right to Mark Frondorf, your Shenandoah Riverkeeper, and he can use that information to help document the problems and find the solutions. You can support the cattle fencing legislation as the attacks on it continue. We will have alerts telling you how to do that, as well as the poultry permit requirements that I talked about. Again, look for alerts, call Mark, let us know how you would like to be involved. You can also attend our Shenandoah member meeting on October 17th. It will be at the river campus of Shenandoah University up in Winchester. Mark will be there. You can meet him and meet your riverkeeper, and you can get a sticker of the Respect the Shenandoah campaign, which I plan to be there, and I plan to get a sticker to put on my car. So I hope you will join us there. Next slide. And the third kind of pollution I want to talk about is toxins. So there's all kinds of toxins, but I'm just going to focus on two of them. One of them is coal ash. And we've been working on coal ash for about 5 years now, and again, have had some very significant victories in getting coal ash, which is the ash that you get when you burn coal. State of the art historically has been to add water to it and put it next to the Potomac River. You see the pond there right next to the river, where it leaches into the river and contaminates the drinking water wells of people that live nearby. And it's filled with all kinds of nasties, with heavy metals, with carcinogens and so forth. You really don't want that in the river or in your drinking water. So we have had good luck in addressing that. I'll talk about that a little more in the next slide. And then PFAS is the other group of chemicals that we have been working on. These are industrial chemicals that serve a number of valuable functions. They make non-stick surfaces like Teflon. They create firefighting foam used at airfields and airports. But the problem is that they don't disappear. They're called forever chemicals. They stay in the environment once they're created, and they have negative effects on the immune system, liver, thyroid, and so forth. Very significant public health threats. So the next slide. So our strategy there is to, well, with PFAS, it's to assess the extent and sources of the toxic pollution. So we've been doing some monitoring in Teedham Creek and working with some groups down at the St. Mary's River, where the state is doing some monitoring, finding high levels of PFAS in both the water column and in the fish. And we will be following up on that science to figure out what are the ways to keep the river from being more contaminated. On the toxic coal ash, again, we have achieved legislative victories in 2019 that require the excavation and safe disposal or recycling of the toxic coal ash. So there, what we're doing is following up with patrolling, investigating, essentially serving as a watchdog to make sure that the power plants meet those requirements. And then in Maryland, the permits also have requirements for treating toxic coal ash before it's discharged in the waterways. So we are continuing to pursue that to make sure that we solidify those victories in Maryland and in Virginia. Oh, so I got a question about the poultry. So we'll get back to that at the end here. Okay, next slide. So how you can help. So one of the things you can do is report spills. Again, you could use Water Reporter, or you can just call. You can call the numbers that are posted on our website. The Riverkeepers respond to those calls, and they follow up on as many of them as they possibly can by going and investigating. You can join a rapid response team. This is a new thing that we are working right now to set up for 2021. What it does is enable trained volunteers to come out and help respond to spills, as well as the 3 riverkeepers, so that we can expand our reach. Dean and some volunteers have been working on the training manuals for that, and we expect to be able to roll that out in 2021. And then, of course, you can support the legislation you know, that we've been talking about, the legislative victories that we've achieved already and those that we will be working to achieve to protect public health. You can testify at a public hearing like Brent Walls, the Upper Potomac Riverkeeper, is doing here. Rate hearings are particularly important to go to and to lend your voice. And the next slide. So to wrap up here, so the Potomac River, the Shenandoah River, those are rivers on the rebound. They are improving over time. We expect the rivers to be cleaner in 10 years than they are today, but they're not always clean. So sometimes the river looks like that picture on the left. Sometimes you see trash, sometimes you see algae, sometimes you see sewage. Sometimes that's what it looks like, particularly after heavy rainfalls. But then it often looks like the picture on the right as well. Another beautiful picture. This one's by Roy Sewell. It's spectacular. So our mission and our collective goal is to move from the picture on the left to the picture on the right. And we can't do it alone. We need your help. So the next slide. So as you may have noticed, I said that the Potomac Riverkeeper was formed in 2000. So we have 20 years of progress that we have been making through our work, protecting, defending, and ensuring that everyone can enjoy the river. So I hope you will join me and Dean Nayax, our Potomac Riverkeeper, in celebrating those 20 years of success. Next slide. And our biggest event of the year is coming up on October 23rd. It's the Law and Water Gala. Many of you are sponsors. Thank you for sponsoring the gala. If you are not yet a sponsor and would like to be one, we can help you with that. There's information on our website about that. But we'd also just love to have you come. It's live. It's not in person, but it's live. It's fun. And this year, because it's virtual, it's free. So please come join us. You can bid on lots of fun auction items. You can help cheer for the Riverkeepers. And there's going to be music. So plan to have some dancing at your home as you watch the gala this year on October 23rd. I put the link there, but you can find it easily on our website by putting in gala. It doesn't come up immediately. So I hope you will join us for that event. And the last slide. So the Potomac Watershed, it's a treasure, but it's a treasure under threat. So we need to keep working to clean it up. It's worth saving. It's worth saving. So please make a gift today to help us save it. So let me see what questions you have. I saw that Mark already answered the question. Thank you, Mark, about the number of chickens and cattle in the Shenandoah. There's also turkeys. So I think it's almost 200 million if you add in the turkeys. Emily, can you unmute yourself and tell me what questions we have?
Yes, it looks like it was just, I only see, can you repeat the data, read number of poultry and cattle in the valley? Will you share your presentation to outline my advocacy opportunities, please?
Add what opportunities?
Outline advocacy opportunities.
Oh, advocacy opportunities. Yeah. So again, let me highlight the Shenandoah, and there we need to defend the legislative victories we had and the victories that we had on the permitting process. So please contact Mark. Look for those alerts on our website. There was ways for you to weigh in and add your voice. That's really important. And then in DC, so the Clean Rivers Project, which is the name that DC Water gets to its CSO, gives to its CSO abatement strategy. There are some important decisions being made this year about how to do investments. We've got an expert helping us figure out what our comments are. Our view is we want to do anything that works. We wanted to do something that is cost effective for the ratepayer and will clean the river. And we'd love to have you involved in that process, supporting our comments there as well and lending your voice. And as I said earlier, going to rate hearings. If you can go to a rate hearing and say, I want to make these investments, they're important to me, that carries a lot of weight with the utilities.
Just a couple of thank yous from John and Greg Singleton. I'm not seeing any other questions, but we'll give it another minute just to see if anyone else has any other questions.
This is Elizabeth Bell talking.
Great.
I have a question about the water quality reports you spoke about. Are they available on the website?
Yes, so we post the results on Swim Guide. So if you go to, if you just do a internet search for Swim Guide,
I'm familiar with that, yes.
Yeah, so that's what we do weekly. And then the Swimmable Potomac report gave all of the analysis from all of last year's water quality monitoring. We will do another report next spring or summer on that. Did I answer?
And the second part is when it's red, showing pollution, is it all right to go kayaking?
Well, that's kind of a judgment call. So most kayakers get wet a little bit when they kayak, and of course some kayakers roll. And I would not suggest rolling if it's red, because you're going to have direct contact with the water. And I would be pretty careful about getting water in your nose and mouth when it's red. So, so I think that's a judgment call. And certainly if you have an impaired immune system, I would not go in the water at all in any kind of boat when it's red.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
comment from Christina Hagman. I loved water testing. Thank you, which is very
Right.
nice.
Well, we have great volunteers. And in fact, Carl Scheider, who runs the water quality monitoring program, is a volunteer, and he will be recognized as the volunteer of the year at the gala this year. So again, I hope you can join us and recognize his great work. We really appreciate it. So let me just thank everybody who joined us today, and thank you for your engagement with the Potomac Riverkeeper Network and your support. We are a little group, and so it means a lot to us to have members like you and supporters like you. We make the most of it, and we're very proud of our work, and we're very proud to have members and supporters like you. So we're very grateful to you. So thank you for joining us today and for all that you do for the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers. Bye-bye.